Hello, everyone. My name is Anurag Rana. I'm the senior Bloomberg intelligence analyst. I'm happy to host this roundtable on ensuring healthy and resilient societies, digital transformation in government. The work of transforming the delivery of services is continuing as governments deliver systems for vaccine management, distribution. In short order, the entire processes of capturing, organizing, disseminating, and securing data have had to be developed. Data and operational infrastructures was already in the need of upgrading, but transforming the data architecture and systems governance has now become imperative. This virtual roundtable convenes a cross-section of government agency leaders who share how technology is helping advance and otherwise improve their ability to do more impactful in executing their missions. There are a few housekeeping notes. We've all heard Sarah talk about it for a while. Please bear with us if we have any technical abilities, issues. If we have any Zoom crashes, please log back and come back in. If you have any applications running in the background, please disconnect them. And if you want to, participate in it, please use the raise hand feature. We're going to try to address that as we go along. Before we get started, I just want to say that, part of what I do at Bloomberg Intelligence or my research practice, I follow a lot of the large cap technology companies, software companies, IT services companies. And over the last 12 months, I have seen a acceleration in the way people do business. Even in the companies that were embracing cloud are just accelerating their. So there's a lot of discussion we'll have in that area. Into it, let me introduce Tim Peiros, Vice President and Global General Manager, Government Industry at IBM, who'll say a few words. IBM is sponsoring today's virtual roundtable. Tim?
Great, thank you, Anurag. And it's a distinct honor and pleasure to be here with you. And probably more importantly, my distinct colleagues from governments across the world and our audience members. Really looking forward to a lively discussion. I was thinking about this last night. All of us have lived through an incredible year, right? We're about a year into COVID. And this sort of feels like us getting together and kind of comparing notes, that this would be almost great for a good beer conversation in a bar somewhere, comparing notes about, what has our life been like over the last year, right? So looking forward to the conversation about, how we emerge stronger from COVID and the role that government can play in restoring a healthy and resilient society. Because it has been a truly wild and unprecedented year, not only for society in general, but for governments in particular, in terms of the essential role that we play in serving society. About this time last year, I was sort of in my routine of helping government agencies and government leaders use technology to achieve their business objectives, their business imperatives. There was this black swan out in the horizon. You were kind of seeing it in the news. But it didn't really seem real about this time last year, right? Depending on how you kind of want to measure it. We were working with many governments around digital transformation, leveraging things like cloud and blockchain and AI in terms of how they want to transform their business. But a lot of those efforts seemed to be like a special project. It was like an extracurricular. You had a special office in a government agency who was focused on innovation. It wasn't embedded in the day-to-day operations of a business. Then COVID hit for real, right? It went from being a black swan on the horizon to being, oh my goodness, this is really happening, right? And we saw governments go through kind of three phases, and we tried to break it down and kind of clear some confusion for many of the agencies we were working with to make it easy to comprehend, right, about what they needed to do. And so the first phase was emergency response, right? It's all about business continuity, keeping the lights on, going to remote working models, going to remote learning models, right? We at IBM, we shipped, we procured, built, imaged, and shipped 350,000 laptops into the city of New York to help underprivileged students who were unwired at home. They didn't have Wi-Fi in their apartments. And when governments went to remote working models, just because someone can go home and they have Wi-Fi and access to the internet doesn't mean they can access their blinking green screen COBOL unemployment system, right? One state, I was reading, state of Illinois saw a 900% increase in their transactions, their requests for benefit and transactions to the unemployment system in a 2-week period. They had trouble intaking all the requests, and they had trouble transacting, actually getting checks out for the requests that they were able to intake. And this is at a time when many folks were reaching out to government for help for the first time, right? Many folks, the only interaction they've had with government is around when they have to go get their driver's license renewed. And all of a sudden we saw this huge uptick in the amount of folks who were dependent or needed help from government. And they wanted that help from government not in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. They needed like it today, right? So that was the first phase. Then we got into, so it was all about business resiliency and business continuity. Then we got into the second phase, which is about recovery and rebuild, and was all about sort of contact tracing and getting people back to work, reopening the economy. And now we're in the emerge stronger phase, right? Where we're not quite there yet, but we see the light at the end of the tunnel. And government agencies are now saying, okay, how do I position for the future? And during this third phase, digital transformation has gone from being this extracurricular thing to it is core. Agencies that we're talking to say, we need to make this happen because we came pretty close to systemic failure early on in this. And so that the type of digital transformation we're seeing is, on the one hand, engaging to serve, so transforming the citizen experience on the front end, linking up silos of different benefits and different departments so that there's one view to the citizen so they can access services, and then modernizing the back end. Again, Lincoln green screen COBOL ain't going to do it anymore. So how do you, what methods can you use to modernize that and go to a hybrid cloud type of arrangement where you can transact on the cloud but keep your private data, in your back end, and then secure and protect. And it's really all about building citizen trust. A main theme that we've seen is that citizens over the last year have begun to lose a little faith in their societal institutions in general, but government in specific, right? So this whole digital transformation is about engaging to serve the citizens in a way that inspires their trust. And by the way, whatever we do now, it's here to stay, right? One of the questions I sometimes get is, okay, when we're done with COVID-19, is the vaccine management stuff that we're doing right now, is that all going to go away? And the answer is no. We will scale it down. Agencies will want to scale it down, but they want to be prepared. Those systems will remain in place. So when the next big thing happens, whether it's the next pandemic or it's some large weather event, or if it's Godzilla, who knows? They want to have those systems in place so that they can react and that we're resilient into the future. And so this really lends itself well to the hybrid cloud approach with AI and blockchain and everything else. So one final point, I hope everyone stays, and I'm wishing everyone both on the panel and in the audience, I hope everyone's staying safe and well. One of the things I do for fun outside of work is I'm a first responder. I serve on the local fire department. We have a mantra, and the mantra is the first rule of emergency management is do not become part of the emergency. Government is truly essential to helping society through this, and we're only as good as the health of the folks in our organization. So I wish everyone well, stay safe and well, because we have a lot of work to do. Anurag, back to you.
Oh, thanks, Tim. So one of the things I do is, at my regular job is to analyze a lot of the companies that are doing basically providing technology and products to almost all verticals, not just government. In fact, most of the companies that I cover, they generate, I think, less than 10% or 5% of their revenue from government. So it's a very important panel for me to learn more about what's happening in some of the government agencies around the world. I cover a Canadian company, his name is Shopify. And when the pandemic, hit, they were coming up with, volume going through their system at the same day, at the same level as it would be on Black Friday for them. So every day was Black Friday for them. So that's the level of, you could say, the use of technology that happened during that time period. So let me start with one basic question, and then, please raise your hand if you want to, kick it off, is when all this thing happened, what were some of the biggest challenges your agency or your department faced, just to understand the severity of the problem that was going through? So if you have any, feedback on that, that would be the first. We'll kick it off with what were your greatest challenges at the time of the pandemic when it hit? Anyone? Tarek, please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Anurag, for kicking this off, and Tim, thank you, for the really broad introduction, and certainly echo, all of those thoughts. Probably from the Minnesota perspective, interestingly, I think we see so many similarities between public sector and private sector. We generally, as it relates to our pandemic response, have seen much of the same activity in the private sector as it relates to increasing the urgency surrounding digital service as we have in public sector for sure. And so there's been a pretty dramatic acceleration, I think, just in society in general. And certainly as that digital acceleration has happened, we have seen so many disparities really grow. We see the impact of people that are not well connected. We see the impact of the many different languages that we speak and the need to provide information in a multilingual manner. We see the challenges in rural areas where access may exist, but not exist to the level where you can even participate in a Zoom meeting effectively. I think that initial, foray, and your comments, kind of awakened back some interesting, thoughts that I actually have not conscientiously pondered for quite some time. This is about the time when we started, planning, when we started thinking, okay, what if, and we didn't, we weren't quite at a place yet where the governor issued emergency executive orders, but this is definitely that time period where we started thinking, if we had to move 40,000 executive branch workers home, what does that mean? What does that look like? And even that 1 or 2 day additional planning ended up being unbelievably, incredibly consequential as society as a whole had a really rush to very limited capacity. If you remember back then, you had a really hard time procuring certain things, in particular from a technology perspective. Those organizations that had to procure technology, whether it was devices or increasing capacity, it was a private sector and public sector mad rush to a really limited supply pipeline. I would say the largest impact, though, looking back at it, really was managing a crisis while our people were within the crisis themselves. Where everyone was going home and the reality of their kids and schools and everyone working in a different posture. And so not only were you asking public sector servants to really, think of broadly how we can continue to serve others, but we also had to deal with, being in the middle of the crisis ourselves in our personal lives. And I think, looking back, that was probably one of the biggest challenges.
Tarek, can I actually just ask a follow-up questions, only because I have everybody's bio and the others may not. Could you please give a little bit of background of what you do? Your background as well as your function in the state of Minnesota.
Oh, I apologize for that. So my name is Tarek Tomes, and I am a member of Governor Walz's cabinet. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the state of Minnesota, and in that capacity, we wear a lot of different hats, if you will. One of the predominant hats that we wear is we're the technology provider for the executive branch of state government. There are approximately 2,500 technologists in my organization, and we support 40,000 state workers in Minnesota and a really broad portfolio of applications. And certainly also, a huge responsibility related from a cyber security perspective, not just within our organization, but broadly. And I'm sure later in the conversation, we'll see a convergence of a lot of additional things that happened during the pandemic that certainly added challenge on top of challenge.
Thank you, Tarek. Hi, Beth. Please, you're next.
Hi, thank you so much, Anurag, and Tim. Also, thank you for your remarks at the outset. So my name is Beth Novak. I am a member of the Governor's Cabinet in New Jersey, where I serve as the Chief Innovation Officer rather than Information Officer. We have a CTO and a Chief Innovation Officer, precisely because we wanted to set up a unit that would be able to respond in an agile way and to respond differently, bringing together technology, data, and policy, as well as design. So in other words, a way of working differently in how we solve problems. That's something we started long before COVID. But I think in terms of the greatest challenge that we saw and where these skills really were brought to bear, and as a result, our office was extraordinarily busy and our fabulous team worked, it's not an understatement to say round the clock, and continue to work around the clock. On really trying to speed up the rate of response. So when you take, for example, that when COVID hit, we needed a way to provide reliable information to people in one place. We stood up what's come to be known as our COVID information hub in 3 days. And we did that by doing things, again, differently than government, the ways typically government works. We partnered with a private sector tech company to actually stand up secure infrastructure, to make sure that we had a place where we could provision that information. But I think almost more unusually, we not only collaborated across government agencies, but to ensure that that information was accessible to people, we brought in a team of 75 university students across the state, as well as our own team, to translate government speak and legalese into plain English. And to ensure that, again, we had high quality information from people, we partnered with the Federation of American Scientists to help crowdsource. We had 600 scientists crowdsourcing responses to scientific questions. So if you wanted to know about school openings and provision of government services, our team helped to put that together. But if you wanted to know about, should I drink bleach or drink vodka to cure COVID, some of the questions we were asking at the beginning, as you'll recall, we were pushing out questions to that team of 600 accredited scientists from the Federation of American Scientists to help answer questions. And then they helped to explain why, in a state of fewer than 9 million people, this site, covid19.nj.gov, has been visited nearly 70 million times since it launched. Over a million, I think 1.2 million people visited the site just this week. And those numbers are really growing. And so it's things like that, creating the nation's first job site for essential workers, 50,000 jobs up online, again, a 3-day project to get it up in alpha and improve it as we went along. So the challenge really was speed. And that required a solution which really was collaboration across government with other sectors like universities and business, and really doing things in a much more open and collaborative way than government, I think, is typically used to doing, and something that I really hope we continue long after COVID ends, which we hope will be in the very foreseeable future.
Oh, that's so nice to hear, Beth. As a fellow New Jersey resident. So I'm really happy to hear that. Anyone else? Hi, Tim, you have a comment?
Sure. Yeah, the comment. So first off, Beth, you make me want to move to New Jersey. So I'm glad to hear all the great things.
You're very welcome. We want lots of people to move to New Jersey and find real estate prices. I fear half of New York already is doing that.
Yeah. So I actually live up here in Connecticut, so we've experienced the same kind of outflow. I'll give you one kind of tactical example of things that we saw, the challenges that we saw, and then one that's maybe a little bit more philosophic, but became an interesting one that we dealt with across the country is, so the first one, tactically, one of the first things we saw is just that there was this huge uptick, as Beth just mentioned, in the engagement of the citizens with government, right? And you had a huge part of the population who found themselves suddenly unemployed and looking for benefits, but who had never really interacted with government in such an intense way in the midst of a crisis, right? And so we saw a lot of the call centers and the websites just get totally overwhelmed, right? And okay, how do you handle that? So we did see in a number of the states the use of AI, for instance, to create like a digital assistant that allowed citizens to go to a website and ask a natural language question, because as a citizen who's not really engaged in government, you don't know that you have to go to this agency over here for unemployment and to this one over here for disability, and it's hard to navigate government, right? Many different agencies that you could approach. So who do I approach? And so we saw this use of digital assistants to reduce the burden on call centers, and allow citizens to come in and say, or residents to come in and say, okay, I'm suddenly unemployed. My mom's in the hospital. What do I do? Who do I talk to, right? And it helped route some of those information, those calls, and at the same time, it helped the new call center folks, because we saw states hiring up new talent who kind of are new to the role, right? They've gone through their initial training, but they don't have the deep experience of a caseworker who's been there for 25 years, right? And so they could use the digital assistants as well to ask, listen in on the phone call and ask questions and kind of help direct. So that's like one tactical example, is just, dealing with the influx and the huge uptick in volume. One that's a little bit more maybe ambiguous is this idea, is this concept around citizen trust. And we really saw this during, I want to call it like May till August, where we were doing a lot of contact tracing work with various governments, right? And so this is in the kind of recover and rebuild. We're going to start reopening the economy. And the issue around the contact tracing that we saw was that there were a lot of folks, a lot of residents out in various states and in the countries that have a natural skepticism of government to begin with, right? They may just not be, they may just not like government. They may be undocumented. In many of the states, there's a large undocumented population. So not really excited to have some faceless government person call them and say, where have you been and who have you been in contact with? A lot of, foreign populations. Tariq, we were having conversations with some folks in Minnesota, and there's a huge population of Hmong in Minnesota. These are the folks who came out of East Asia, after the Vietnam War and settled in Minnesota. Again, language barriers potentially, and not very trustworthy of government. And so that was a real challenge in that phase, was how to build trust, making sure that you have people in the contact tracing center, for instance, who are from the local population, or they're not just some faceless person, but they're maybe recognized around town, that they understand the language, that they understand the cultural nuances, and that they're able to marry that with our technology. That was a key challenge that we saw.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. This is very interesting. Hillary, I would love to hear your thoughts on the topic, please.
Sure, thanks. I'll be quick. It sounded like you were about to transition to another question, but I think in terms of biggest challenges, early days, we'll completely agree with both Tariq and Beth and Tim in terms of the severity of the digital divide, being in the middle of the crisis. Essentially, we talked a lot about how we're not just working from home. Like, I'm not just having a casual work from home day where I can go to the coffee shop. I'm working from home during a crisis with my kids and my family around me, trying to get work done. Very, very different kind of management of people and taking care of people that was needing to happen. Speed, obviously, to reiterate what Beth said about her team, we were in the same position. And I think at the end of the day, one of the things that really emerged quickly was data. And not necessarily the lack of good data, but how to get at it and how to get it in one place. That was one thing that our team took on pretty early, with the support of the highest levels of both the political side and the official side here in Ontario, was just getting in touch with every ministry and every program that had a piece of the puzzle, that was responsible for a piece of the puzzle, and saying, you gotta let go a little bit. That tendency of, this is my data, I need to manage it, I do my things with it, but to just say, we need it, we have to bring it up into these high level dashboards, we have to get a picture of what's going on. So I'm privileged to have the position of Chief Digital and Data Officer in Ontario. And so the team has been firing on all cylinders on both sides of that equation. And the data piece, I think, has been just as crucial as the digital transformation piece as well.
No, thank you, Henry. And I would love to hear examples from everybody. So I'm not jumping on to another question, because the thing is, when we did enter the, I would say, the critical phase, this wasn't anything anybody had ever planned with. So, from a lot of us who work for tech companies, we have had contingency plans on for a long time because a lot of our workers do work from home. But I don't expect that for, bulk of the rest of the world. So it's interesting to see how people were able to, put together plans pretty quickly so that they can provide the service that they are required to provide. So would love to hear from, Amy, as to, what was it that, how did that impact your department, and, what did you do to respond to that?
Hi, good
Hey there.
morning.
Oh,
I think
sorry.
you were calling out upon me. I wasn't sure
Yeah.
there was a little bit of a break in the conversation, but I'll jump in right
Oh,
now.
sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah.
So just so everybody knows, just a quick self-intro. My name is Amy Tong, and I am the State Chief Information Officer as a part of the governor's team. And actually, my colleague, Marco, wave your hand, Marco, it's also from the governor's team. And obviously here we cover California. I think one of the things that, as hearing from many of our colleagues, that it's good and to hear a lot of a commonality of the challenges that we're all facing. But I think one thing that I might add to it is that perhaps this is more unique to California, given the size and complexity of our state. And I mean, just a bit of a comparison, just the executive branch alone, right? We have 230,000 employee, and to not only supporting that employee, but having a group of employee in the 230,000, making sure they are working in the speed and robustness and all the tools that they need to support. I don't even know how many millions, was it close to 40 million residents in California? The end of the day, what really matter is every single one of those residents feel like they have access to information, they have access to resources that they need, they have access in the resource that they need in the way that they feel comfortable to accessing those. And I think that kind of a sheer volume and complexity and the size of the state creates probably even another layer of a challenge that we have to deal with. So working very closely with what I call our program department, because technology is a way of delivering the information, that we also need to make sure that our public sector workers that have every necessary tools that are available to them, but at the same time, coming from the angle that these are not what I call it a single discipline of ability to achieve, right? We have very quickly needing to form a multidisciplinary team that, as I think some of the colleagues or panel member have discussed earlier, it's the usual departmental org chart immediately have to be broken apart, right? And it's a one team, one fight, and with a common goal, and pretty much everybody's expertise kick in to complement each other. And I think from that end, even that organization change management has to be conducted the same time we're dealing with the crisis, the same time that we're reacting to the public need. So I do want to highlight that even though I think we all survived it, we still have more work ahead, but making sure that how the team work in a cohesive manner, with the normal phase you go through, right? Forming and storming before you can accelerate and all that. The human element on this, it was very, very critical. So I don't know if Marco wants to jump in as well. I know he has been just incredible in leading that execution for the state of California. So Marco.
Thanks, Amy. I'm Marco Meach. I'm the Deputy Secretary for the California Health and Human Services Agency. We have about 12 departments and 5 offices within our agency, one of them being public health, which is obviously responsible for the broader response activities. Over 30,000 employees across our agency alone. And what I will say is that COVID-19 really for us has been an accelerant for change in many ways. And I think I'll just share with you one example that we worked on and highlights kind of this ability for us as a government to be more nimble and agile in our ability to respond, but also to provide better services to the people. And I think in the health and human services space, traditionally, what we've been doing a lot of with prior to COVID-19 is really thinking about how do we better serve the whole person. We've got people coming through 5 different doors, and how do we wrap ourselves more holistically around them, assess their needs, and deliver the programs and services that they might need. And I think that philosophy really was put on steroids during COVID-19, and it's something we're still working through. I will just say that COVID isn't gone, and I think we are in kind of this stage where we're vaccinating while still going through an active pandemic. And what the recovery looks like, which hopefully will happen within the next couple of months, will really tell us how we respond and whether or not some of these things will stay sticky. But we in California have a decentralized delivery system. We, the state, do not administer services and programs. We have our locals that do it. We have 58 counties. And in the instance of public health, we have 61 jurisdictions. And every jurisdiction was doing things a little bit differently. And Tim alluded to contact tracing at the very beginning. What we learned at the very beginning of the pandemic, and fortunately for us, I think we got a little bit of a head start, because I think we both had repatriation flights coming from China into California. And so we really had to robustly wrap ourselves around and respond as one government to the repatriations. But we also had cruise lines coming to our shore and had to get folks off those cruise lines and get them into care. And so those things really prepped us for what I think happened later on, which is a real active community transmission. But contact tracing in particular was an instance where we had some local jurisdictions still using Excel spreadsheets to do contact tracing. And what we worked with Amy and her team on was really, how do we build a contact tracing, 21st century contact tracing system in less than a couple of weeks that was robust enough that enabled us to deploy to large jurisdictions like Los Angeles County and small jurisdictions like Humboldt in order for us to really be able to leverage the technology for us to do the public health intervention, which was, how do we stop the virus? How do we break the transmission of the virus? And I think that just gives you one example where I think what we did is really took a local need, the need to have a platform, because I think the antiquated systems with regards to public health just illuminated the notion that we weren't ready for this large-scale response. And we really tried to make something available that met the needs of our local folks. We've iterated on that. The version we deployed at the very beginning looks very different from the version that we have now. And in fact, we have a virtual agent that's part of our contact tracing program. So I think all of those things have helped us tremendously in our response.
Thank you, Mark. You had could you hear me, Dom?
You faded out there for a second, Anurag. Dom?
Yeah, I got you now, Anurag. Sorry, you were silent there for a minute. But yeah, very similar experience at the Department of Veterans Affairs to all my esteemed colleagues on the panel here. VA is very large. We have over 500,000 staff, if you include our contractor staff, servicing 20 million or so veterans. And, you know, as you can imagine, being the largest healthcare system in the United States, we operate hospitals in every state of the union and thousands of clinics all over the U.S. You know, we can't afford to go down. We can't afford to have a lag, even if it's a 100-year black swan event. You know, it's just not a choice for us to not be able to provide those services. It's a huge network. It's very vast. It's sprawling, and it's very complex. You know, you're seeing 50 years of technology here that's all risen up over the years. So one of the things that helped us was we began a digital transformation a few years ago. And I'll just tell you quick, the 5 things we focused on, because it really helped us, was exceptional customer service. You heard some of the other members talking about how it really has to come down to the user and what the user needs are. And for us, that's the veterans. The second was IT modernization. We had a very aged infrastructure over the course of that 50 years. So we were focusing on software and hardware and technical debt. Third was strategic sourcing and buying smartly. That helped in terms of having established relationships with vendors. They came and they showed up almost immediately after the pandemic started culminating, and they were shoulder to shoulder with us working on how we could get some sourcing in place to get the equipment we needed. We scaled up to getting a 250,000 additional laptops and over 100,000 cell phones and mobile devices to help with telehealth and telework. And then the fourth was investing in our IT workforce. We have a skilled and trained staff, and we're really trying to hire some of the best and the brightest to keep this network running. And fifth, achieving seamless and secure interoperability, making sure all of our systems interconnect and are secure. Security was a big issue with this, especially at the VA. We have vast troves of millions of veterans' private personal information and health information. So you can't, move out on this too quickly and forget about security and leave that behind, because then it's going to kneecap your mission. And it's not just about security, it's about availability and integrity of the data that you're getting out there to help care for the veterans and help our clinicians. So because we had kind of already been working on all of this, and building out and modernizing our infrastructure, we were in a good place. And I'll mention one other thing, building out our cloud, enterprise cloud environment. We were very fortunate to have already built out a very robust and dependable cloud environment, and had already moved hundreds of our applications, some of our largest, our enterprise mail system and Office 365, all up into the cloud. So this made sure that all of not just the back-end business solutions, but also our electronic healthcare management system were all, in cloud environments that had resiliency and scalability, so that we could adjust to meet the need. And I'll just finish by saying, I agree with some of the other panelists that, what's going to stick. I mean, it's all going to stick. We've been trying to push telehealth for many years, because we have veterans in all the far reaches of the U.S. It's very hard for them to get to our brick and mortar facilities, and it's very hard for our clinicians to get out to see everyone that they need to see, the doctors and the practitioners who need to see the veterans. We were trying to get telehealth out there, but there was some resistance there, some apprehension, because people didn't really want to move away from that face-to-face, that really rich encounter between a physician and a patient. But COVID forced our hand, and fortunately, one of the good things out of this is clinicians and patients are seeing the power of this, and that it can be a very robust and a very rich experience to do some follow-up examinations and some diagnosing. We've even used telehealth capabilities to help with suicide prevention. So people have seen the power of this, and they're not going to give it up. We're not going to go back. Veterans like that they don't have to drive 2 hours for a follow-up appointment, and when they can't drive, have to burden someone with driving them. They can do this from the privacy of their own home. And they can also use the mobile devices that they have. A lot of them have mobile devices that have very high definition cameras and audio capabilities. We know bandwidth is a concern for remote users, and we've been working with private sector partners to see what we can do to get some bandwidth out to veterans who need it. But there's no going back here. And for any of us who looked into a digital transformation for their organization as a nice to have, we all know now it's a need to have. There's no going back.
That's very, very, good, Dom. Amanda, let's, listen from you, and then I'll hop on to the next or the most important question of all, please.
Okay. Hi, thank you all. I'm glad to be here today. I'm Amanda Crawford. I'm the state Chief Information Officer for the state of Texas and the Executive Director of the Texas Department of Information Resources. And we help to provide information technology security solutions and strategy to state government here in the great state of Texas. And I echo what many of you all, I mean, I think our experience was very similar to what you all had as far as, challenges, whether it was sourcing devices, or balancing that very important human element that we have and continuing to deliver for Texans while we were all battling our own issues in the midst of this pandemic. So, but thankfully, for our agency, we had already been adding agile and flexible options for state agencies prior to the pandemic. And that we believe, and the vision always was, that these will allow the public to interact with government in the same way that they've become accustomed to interacting with the private sector. And I think really for all of us, and certainly for our state to come out of this stronger, that's something that we need to be able to meet. So, for example, to echo a lot actually of what Dom said, since we had a very similar playbook that we had already been integrating secure public and private cloud services through our software-defined data centers so that we could quickly expedite customer demands. And we leveraged existing relationships. We have very strong industry partnerships here that are part of our shared technology services that we offer to agencies here in the state. And we were able to leverage those relationships to help move applications quickly into the cloud. And allow agencies to access those important data tools, again, trying to pull the data from all the different sources into one usable format that we could actually make good, solid, data-driven decisions was so important. And also going back to Tim's point about a digital assistant. So we had been developing a digital assistant. It's known as Texas by Texas, which is this My Government, My Way concept. And it's allowing, again, Texans to interact with their government in a secure, mobile, easy to understand way. They expect that just like we are all here from across the country sitting together in this room and we're talking about these things, I think that the public expects that we do this on a local level all the time. And we know that that's just unfortunately not the case. And so I think it's really, it's something that we are all called to do as government is to work on that and to help be able to deliver for our constituents. One thing I did want to talk about as well, and it's been touched on a little bit, is obviously certainly connectivity. And the last mile issues were so important as our employees were, for example, for us, we more than doubled our internet capacity on the state network to be able to handle those demands, but you still had those last mile issues, whether it was with employees or with Texans who weren't able to connect. We have the students who have those issues. So broadband issues in our state are important. It's actually one of our governor's priorities right now that we're working on. And the other issue I think that I don't think I've heard come up yet is security. And I think that that's one of the things that was a tremendous challenge as we, essentially broadened this attack surface by, a huge multiplier to be able to continue to deliver these services to our constituents, but in a secure manner. And the importance of security, and whether it's training and responding, certainly the SolarWinds issue that's come up has brought all of that and made it top of mind as we're all working remotely, but responding to some of these events. So, moving forward on the importance of that, I think we can talk about digital transformation. We can talk about having these tools that thankfully we had, and it was just a matter of scaling. But at the end of the day, if we don't have connectivity and we don't have security, then the rest of those tools, it really doesn't matter all that much, because those are the linchpins to be able to continue to deliver the services that our constituents deserve and demand and they need. So.
Thank you, Amanda. So one of the things is, and again, we're at 9:47 right now, or sorry, 10:47 Eastern time. And, the next question I have is I'm going to bundle a few things together so that when you get a chance to answer, you can cover a lot of those things together. So we heard a lot of interesting stuff. we listen to, chatbots or natural language processing, security, data privacy. So, the first response was, let's get connected, let's get, things up in order. Now we are in a second phase. We're entered 2021 and looking towards 2022 in terms of what do we need to do from a tech spending point of view? What do we need to fix first? So we all got the Zoom licenses and everybody's happy with that. That's not probably going to go away, which is fine. But the question at hand now is for all of us is, and this is my big question for all of you, is security attacks or cyber attacks have gone through the roof. As you look at the portfolio of assets that you have, of your software assets, of your hardware assets, or any technology products that you have, how have you, what is your thought process as to, what gets upgraded first, what remains on premise, what goes on the cloud? So any strategy or comments around that would be very helpful to others as well, because I think that's somewhere, that's a place everyone is currently struggling to figure out is, the dollars are limited, or the capital is so tight right now because of obvious answer, taxes, all those issues. But would love to hear from all of you, please. And again, in whichever way you want to format this, is where are you going next? What gets upgraded first? What remains on premise? What goes on the cloud? And how do you, what do you do with this security problem? Because that's not going away anytime soon. So would really love to hear, comments from all of you, given that we only have a few minutes left now. Anyone? Sarah, I'm back with us. Would love to hear what you have to say.
Sure, happy to share a few thoughts. So I'm Sarah Wilkinson, I'm CEO of NHS Digital, so we are the tech provider for the NHS in the UK. And I suppose that one of the things that's clear to us is that an awful lot of what we built is here to stay. Whereas I suppose if you'd asked me this time last year, I thought I was building an awful lot of temporary infrastructure, and it's pretty clear now that a lot of that temporary infrastructure becomes permanent. So the testing facilities that we have will continue because we still need to test people for COVID and will for the foreseeable future, and we make use of those in all sorts of different ways. Potentially may change some of the service pathways, so it's more frequently the case that you get tested on your way into primary care and not just on commissioning, for example. The vaccination infrastructure will be here for the long term. We'll obviously kind of combine that with vaccination infrastructure for flu and child immunisation, travel clinics and everything, so there's a lot of opportunities there. The shielding of clinically extremely vulnerable patients will continue for quite a while. So an awful lot of this sort of stuff that we've built is still critical. I think there's things like clinical research, research into vaccination intervals and all sorts of other research that comes out of this will continue for a long time, and they will need a huge amount of data servicing. So we don't really see demand going south in any way, really. Plus, of course, as has been said several times today already, I mean, we're in a new world now. People have different expectations. There are different modalities. People will get their medical consultations remotely. Many more users are comfortable using digital channels. And then, of course, there's the huge problem of the backlog in the system. And that is a huge concern. Well, it's a huge concern for us, but I'm sure it's a huge concern for everybody. So, there is no sense at all that work is now going to kind of peter off. I think it's going to continue at a pace for quite some time. And your question about workload placement, I think, is fairly complicated. Some degree of thought has to be given to whether any particular workload needs to be placed on public hypercloud or self-owned kind of private, properly elastic cloud or old-style data centers or what have you. So that's a horses for courses type of problem, I think. I think we, so we look. I mean, load, which was a huge problem for us right at the beginning of the pandemic, and the ability to suddenly service vastly higher loads on all sorts of different systems. There's one of the things we certainly will be focusing on, true elasticity, the nirvana of things that scale beautifully. So there's a lot of things that come out of the experiences of the last year that I think will carry with us into the future. Added to the fact that, as I say, I don't see almost any services that we built that just become obsolete and fall away, unfortunately.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Hillary, please, you would love to hear what you have to say, given your dual hat with data as well as your regular role.
Sure, thanks. I think as any good digital team would tell you, focus on the users, and that's what we've tried to do to answer your question in terms of what's next and what gets prioritized. We've worked closely with our corporate chief information office and their team that is embarking on a true roadmap for technology and an investment plan. And initially, I think the team found about just hundreds. I think it was over 300 user journeys essentially that they identified that people are trying to accomplish a task with the Ontario government. And then sort of broke it down from there. So focused on people, what they're trying to get done with us, and then what do our capabilities and what do our platforms, what do we enable, what do we currently not enable, what are the overlapping pieces, where can we have a true kind of component-based platform approach, and trying to really think of it from that perspective. So what are the fundamental enablers that will allow us to move forward on the most things and enable teams to get going quickly across the enterprise. So we're focusing on things like our Notify platform, which the team in the UK did first. And it's essentially just a component that can be used on many different systems to send out those notifications, to send SMS, email, etc. So what are things like that enable things to get done quickly and really kind of focused on like I said, those foundational enablers. We also have done great work with our ministers and my minister as the president of the Treasury Board to help them understand what investments need to be made across the board. And the need to be able to move fast, to be agile, both in how we work, but in how we are budgeting and planning for some of this as well. So that's been actually a huge piece of work for our team over the last several months. We are working with about half of the cabinet right now on an endeavor called the Future State Modernization Committee. And that committee of ministers is now really setting some priorities and some targets for the public service in terms of projects and planning, and has created a fund, a $500 million fund over the next 3 years to accelerate things, and trying to take that sort of staged, gated approach. So you come in with an idea, you get a small tranche of funding to go to experiment, to see if it's the right idea, to see if you do understand the problem space, and to figure out how to move on that to the next phase. If you're successful, you come back and you get your next round of funding. So we're trying to do some agile budgeting, if you will, as well, and linking all of these things together for inside the machine has been yeoman's work for the team, but it goes hand in hand with technology. And has been really gratifying to see things move on both on both sides of the machine.
I'm actually very happy to hear that. That's a very interesting approach about the experiments with that. So we're very, very happy to hear that. Tariq, please.
I really echo and the comments that Hillary made really resonate. One of the things that we've certainly seen throughout the pandemic is this hyper productive state that we have generally all been in, and the trust, as Tim alluded to, both from the public in government services, but also just the trust in the innovative capabilities that technology really represents now in a very tangible, quickly accessible manner. And that trust in robotic process automation or chatbots or data visualization capabilities that can help inform decision making has really been highlighted. And for us, I think as it relates to kind of the what's next, it's really important to keep people at the center of the solutions that we create, and to make sure that our what's next is driven by areas where there's the most impact. You have to, I think, stay away from the inward focus related to the tech debt that, certainly any and all large organizations have, and make sure that the what's next is driven by areas that will provide the most impact, that are most closely aligned and most closely tied to the values of your administration, whether it's work related to children or education or other areas. The cybersecurity aspect, has been alluded to, is certainly vital. In the middle of the pandemic, we had the unfortunate killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, and really unprecedented civil unrest that ensued as a result of that. And that civil unrest certainly had a huge digital manifestation as well. Anytime there are physical events, there are going to be cyber events that are connected to those protests, and making sure that the systems and services that people rely on, that they have an ability to not be disrupted when the digital unrest or the cyber protests erupt. The people that are impacted generally are people that are looking for unemployment insurance, people that are looking to call a suicide prevention hotline, those members of our society that are most vulnerable. The other thing that I think is really, really crucial is this incredible partnership that's been formed across private sector and public sector, not just from private sector technology companies that have really come with intimate awareness of the needs that need to be met, but also just a huge partnership. If you think about the healthcare systems and everything from testing information that has to be moved, literally at really urgent speeds to help support decision making, to hospital capacity, understanding how many ICU beds are available, in a state on any given moment, that inform then huge, larger decisions, to now the unbelievable vaccination challenges as we have a shortage of vaccine and significantly more demand, and how do you navigate making sure that vaccine is provided to those members of your community that are most vulnerable to the impacts of COVID-19. And so I think that people-centered approach to where to go next that allow us to use, as broad a set of innovative capabilities that exist in the marketplace. Certainly lots of cloud constructs really will allow government to continue to pivot to meet people where they are and meet their demands in the time of need when they need them.
Thank you, Tarek. Dom, I see your hand being up.
Thank you. And I know we're about out of time. I'll be quick. To your question about what to look at to send to the cloud, COVID showed us we need to be able to scale quickly. We went from about 25,000 telehealth visits a month to now we hit about 45,000 telehealth visits a day. So, the numbers went up exponentially. So as CIO for the VA, what I'm going to focus on is things that need to scale to that velocity and to meet the users and the customers' needs, the veterans' needs. So really going to look hard at what we have, what we can put in the cloud that will benefit from that scaling and the security that's built into the cloud. We in the U.S. federal government have a very robust FedRAMP process to manage security for solutions that will end up in the cloud. So we'll leverage that. And then finally, I just want to mention data. We're seeing with the huge growth of online services, a lot of patient-generated data out there from telehealth and using or leveraging wearables to get data about patients. Our new electronic health record modernization. We have tons and tons of data. How can we get that help get the veterans' data serving the veterans and helping them so they get better, timely care, more care that's more effective at treating their issues. Hillary mentioned notifications. How do we leverage their data to make sure they're notified about their visits and when they need to come in, or the status of their claims and their benefits? So I think data is something we're going to be looking at, data analytics and machine learning and AI to really, sort of close the deal on all this and get those digital and online services really humming.
Oh, that's very helpful. That's very great, Dom. I'm impressed to hear about those peak numbers that you're doing telehealth with. So that's very impressive. We have 1 minute remaining. Tim, any final words from you before we wrap it up?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been taking notes here, and there's been some really good quotes. So I'm going to go back and look at the recording later. Dom had a couple, Tariq had a couple, Hillary. But if I looked at two themes that seem to be emerging from this conversation, and I think Dom really put this well, is that digital transformation is no longer like a nice to do. It's accelerating. It's a necessity, and it's here to stay. So everything that we're doing now is really setting a new sort of foundation for government into the next decade, right? So that's one piece. The other piece is, I'll try to articulate this, it feels to me like there's almost a coming of age in many of the new technologies that we've been talking about, right? So we've talked about AI and machine learning. We've talked about cloud and hybrid cloud. We've talked about new security tools, robotic process automation. I think Tariq mentioned, big data and analytics, things like that. All of these technologies have been kind of swirling, or all these capabilities have been kind of swirling, and we're all doing initiatives around them. But it's almost like they were ready made for the challenges that we face today. And the important piece that I would pull out of that as well is that each one of these things, cloud, AI, et cetera, are transformational in their own right. You could say that each one of them is as big and as transformational, as revolutionary as the internet was, right? Back in 99, 2000. But the distinction is that these are all happening at exactly the same time. They're all coming together and converging in their maturity and in the capabilities they can provide. They're converging all at the same time to allow us to do things that, hey, we wouldn't be able to do 3 or 4 years ago. If this pandemic hit in 2012, I don't think that we'd be having as positive a conversation as we are having now. So just a thought.
No, that's good. Tim, thank you. Thanks, everybody. This has been really, really amazing. I've learned so much today in terms of that the issues facing all of you are very similar. And it seems like all of you are, pretty aggressive in the way you are changing your own architecture, your own infrastructure to ensure business continuity and, the well-being of your citizens. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure meeting all of you. Hopefully we'll meet in person one of these days. Thanks. Bye.